Very good. Welcome everyone to the Tuesday, March 13th meeting of the Brisbane Planning Commission. Could I have a roll call, please? Present.
Commissioner Mackin?
Here.
Commissioner Sayason?
Here.
Let the record show Commissioner Munir is absent.
So if no one has any items to add to the agenda, could I have a motion to adopt?
I move that we adopt the agenda as is.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Consent calendar. Please note that the items listed here as consent calendar items are considered routine and will be acted upon collectively by one motion adopting the Planning Department's recommendation, unless a member of the public, the Commission, or its staff asks to remove an item to discuss it. Does anyone have an item that they would like to remove? No. Seeing none, I may have a motion to approve the draft action minutes.
Make a motion to approve the draft action minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Right, the draft action minutes from February 13th, 2018, approved. Oral communications. If anyone has any business on any item not on the agenda, please come forward at this time. Seeing none, we'll go on to written communications, and I see no written communications today. New business. Today we have a public hearing on the extension of the design permit DP 115 at 23 San Bruno Avenue, which is in the NCRO 2 neighborhood commercial district. Staff, do you have a report on this?
Yes, thank you. The application before the Planning Commission is for a time extension to the previously approved design permit for 23 San Bruno Avenue. This is within the NCRO 2 neighborhood commercial zoning district. In January of 2016, the Planning Commission approved a design permit for this project, but that had a 2-year expiration date if a building permit had not yet been issued. Although the applicant has been pursuing a building permit, it was not ready to issue when the application expired, which was just last month. Municipal code allows for the Planning Commission to extend the time limit another 3 years beyond the original 2-year expiration date. For your reference, the agenda report for this item included the original reports from when the Planning Commission reviewed and approved the project in 2016. Given that the proposed design for this project was already heard and approved by the Planning Commission, I won't get into the project details, but I'll just provide a very short outline of the project. The applicant proposes to demolish this single-story existing commercial building and replace it with a new 3-story mixed-use building. The development would include a 550 square foot ground floor commercial space and then 4 2-bedroom apartment units, each of which is in the approximately 1,300 square feet of living space. And there would be 6 parking spaces to serve the residential units located behind that commercial space on the ground floor. The 4 residential units would be located side by side on the 2nd and 3rd floors. The building would meet all of the development standards, with one allowance is provided by the code that was granted by the Planning Commission, and that's for the commercial space to be slightly less than 600 square feet in area. The building design is modern. It's characterized by simple, clean lines and strong geometric forms and materials that complement the building form. There were 20 design permit findings. The Commission made all of the required findings in 2016 and granted the design permit, and neither the project nor the applicable regulations have changed since that time. A use permit was also granted in 2016, which allowed for the residential use. And an extension of that permit is not necessary since the municipal code doesn't require an extension, and it's tied to the design permit. So use permits generally run with the land. The list of design permit findings and the conditions of approval that were provided in the Commission's draft resolution, so those are in that resolution, and the resolution simply affirms those original findings and conditions of approval to extend the design permit. So in closing, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the requested extension to the design permit via adoption of Resolution DP 115E, containing the findings and conditions of approval.
Thank you very much for the report. Would the applicant like to say any words about the project? Yes, please.
Hello. We're slowly making headway here. Apologize for the delay in this project. We just suffered a major setback with actually getting soils reports that caused us to re-engineer basically the whole foundation and complex calculations there. So that's the main reason for our delay and why we're here tonight. Any questions?
What was the findings of the soil report that caused you to have to redesign?
They found that there's a possibility of liquefaction during an earthquake, and he wanted or suggested a more robust foundation system requiring grade beams and such like that. So it required us to go right back to the drawing board and resubmit all, engineer and design all that stuff. So that takes time.
Do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, actually it may come from staff or the applicant, if you could stay there.
Sure.
So the request is for a 3-year extension. Why are we going for 3 years?
This is what, I wouldn't expect that the applicant would take nearly that long. I think they're fairly close, but it's allowed by the ordinance, and it's what they had indicated in their extension request. But it could be approved for a lesser time if
Right,
that was the
I'm
commission's
just
desire.
wondering.
But it's allowed for up to 3, and staff didn't see another date that seemed reasonable to pick. It keeps it open to them.
Okay, because maybe as property owner you could address it, because it sounded from staff's report that you were very close to getting your
Yeah.
permits, and of course soil, that's a big issue, and
Yeah.
if you're having to re-engineer, but I'm just curious, do you really need the 3 years? Are we just doing this because we can, or should we? I mean, is there a downside to doing 3 years?
I don't see really a downside. I would say I think ultimately so they have a active building permit application, and they need to keep that active
Yes.
as well. So I think it's in their interest to get this issued and get going on it. I don't think having surplus time hurts. It just, if we cut the time too short, then we're back here again, and I just didn't see a need for cutting it shorter.
Okay. And I just have a couple questions, because I did read through this, and I remember the meetings back in 2016 where it was presented. There was talk about the tree in the rear of the lot, and I'm just curious if there's anything that was done with that, because that also was brought up as a compaction problem, and
Right.
has that come up in your soil study?
No, not yet. The tree, it's doing well now.
Mm-hmm.
There's no, at least it's on a neighboring property.
Right.
There's no roots or busted up concrete because of the tree. So I don't think that's an issue. Plus, we have a 10-foot setback.
Yes.
So we're even further back from the tree now. If anything, the tree is going to be happier because it's going to be a permeable surface
Right.
on that setback.
Have you been able to trim that? Because that was one of the issues. the last-
Coincidentally, the neighbor or the property owner of that tree had a crew come in and do a lot of that work for me.
Oh, good.
So
Nice.
it worked out pretty well. I just had to let them use our yard as a staging area. So they did a pretty nice job.
And I'm just curious, since this is 2 years later now, well, over 2 years, in the last meeting where you came before the planning, you mentioned that you were trying to secure a space in Crocker Industrial Park for your business. Is
Right.
that still part of the plan?
Yeah, I mean, I'd prefer a more high-profile, visible spot for my business. But yeah, really, the business probably won't be able to function adequately out of 550 square feet of space.
And it becomes more relevant because we just approved across the street, you probably know, senior housing.
Right.
There's a component to retail spaces below. There's no regulation for parking for a commercial and mixed use as yours.
Yeah.
But the neighbors, of course, are gonna be concerned, so I just thought for their benefit, we should ask the question.
Sure, yeah.
Because you've got quite a few trucks and vans, and that was something you indicated you thought you might be selling.
Yeah. Yeah, we thinned the herd a little bit, and
Yeah.
guys are taking some stuff home, so,
Right,
yeah.
okay, that's all I have.
Commissioner Sayasin, did you have any questions?
Nope, no questions.
Alrighty.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you. I had one question for staff. When issues come up like this, like the soils report for 23 San Bruno, is that ever of any interest to the neighboring properties? And does staff take any action to like notify them that they might want to investigate earthquake bulwarking for their properties?
So if a, two different sides, I guess. One is existing development or proposed development. Proposed development would have to undertake their own investigations, and I would imagine they also look at what's existing in the area, but they would have their own, which these two properties on either side are already developed.
Right,
But
and I noticed
it-
35 San Bruno has been undergoing some form of structural repair for a very long time, and I don't know if there's any cause for concern about that.
Yeah, I don't. So that building, I believe, goes back to the 1960s, and information on their building wouldn't be a trigger for them to proactively do some kind of retrofit on their building. So
Yeah, I was thinking more informational rather than compulsory.
it's available to anybody. It's available to the public as a document to view or get a copy of with permission from the engineer and owner. But it's not the city's practice necessarily to reach out and say, hey, there's information on this neighboring property. I know that property has been through, well, the 1989 earthquake, and so, to my knowledge, there was no damage at that time. So it's withstood the test of time, which I think says something for its initial design. And they would have had soils reports of their own at the time when they built that building. You know, it's modern enough and big enough that you know, the codes that would have been in place at the time would have had.
But did you have
Some kind of
anything on file about liquefaction being an issue in that part of San Bruno Avenue?
Well, not as a whole. It's on a case-by-case basis as these things come up, and soil report would be done for individual projects.
Although there is, you know, if you look at the general plan maps, there's a general, you know, area of fill in that marsh area is not defining the actual limits of any particular site conditions or where that edge is, because again, the scale of that map is quite gross, but anybody who's looking at that basic underlying city information would have the understanding that they're at a, and again, a public document, the general plan, that they're at a, potentially at an area that could be, you know, within those sort of, at risk of liquefaction because of its underlying fill nature. So there is information in the city records at a general plan level, but again, for any kind of project, as Ken mentioned, they'll have to do an individualized soils report.
So like, for example, if Parkside started to build out, then more soils reports would be in their future.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that information. Would anyone else like to speak on this subject? All right. Do I close the public hearing here?
I
Right up.
move that we close the public hearing.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Any items for discussion?
No.
All right. Can I have a motion to approve the extension then?
I move to approve the extension of design permit DP-1-15. Lawn Carter applicant owner.
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Do we have any items from staff tonight?
Oh, just a couple of quick ones. One is the council did have their planning commission interviews last week. I believe due to the late hour and the number of candidates, they carried over their deliberations to this evening. So I think those are going to happen later this evening. So hopefully we'll have some closure soon from the council in terms of their appointments. The last council meeting, council did approve our we have to do an annual report on the housing element, in terms of to HCD, the state, in terms of our progress in meeting our various housing element obligations. So the council directed staff to send that off to the state. And then next week, the council is going back to revisit the Baylands. They're meeting on Thursday, the 22nd. So they'll be deliberating again on the Baylands. So that's all I have.
May I ask you a question, if the chair permit? Do you receive any kind of response, an anticipated response on those RENA numbers from the state? Do they typically respond?
No, because typically all you're doing is you're reporting back on what you've done, and it's a very much a standardized format that the state has come up with. So you're basically filling in the numbers, identifying what you've done, what your obligations were. So typically, no, it doesn't, unless there's some deficiency in what you've turned in. You don't normally hear from the state.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. And if you're interested, I could certainly have that forwarded to you just for your edification if you want to see what, it's not a very lively document, but if you're interested in what it looks like, I can certainly make it available.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting. Thanks. Are there any items initiated by the commission?
I have none.
All right, then can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion that we adjourn to the next regular meeting of March 27th, 2018.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Barely got the seat warm.